Welcome back to Bloom. Certain unsuspecting bad habits could weigh more heavily on the heart than you might realize. Joining us now is cardiologist and the best-selling author of Heartbreak and Heart Disease. Welcome back to Bloom, Dr. Sinatra. It's so great to see you again.
And you as well. It's been a long time, but it's great to be here.
Likewise, great to have you. So, there are some obvious things that we've probably heard about in the past. Like many of us are aware that drinking too much alcohol, not exercising, smoking, and eating unhealthy foods are bad for the heart. But what are some lesser known bad heart health habits?
Well, there are lesser known habits that are really germane to the conversation because sleep right now is crucial. Now, we used to think years ago that getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep was the ideal situation. But recently, in the European Heart Journal, they talked about the hour of sleep, which trumps everything now. And I can tell you, being an invasive cardiologist and being up in the middle of the night, many times I resonated with this article. And what the article states is that they looked at about 88,000 people over about a 5-year period. And what they realized was that people, and especially women, this was more true of women than of men. So there's probably a gender-specific situation going on here. But if you went to bed at midnight or after midnight, you had much more cardiovascular risk as opposed to going to bed during a sweet spot being between 10 and 11 p.m. Now, if you went to bed before 10 p.m., like 9:30 or 9 p.m., you even had a higher risk. But the highest risk was going after at midnight. And I got to tell you, after reading this and suffering many times in the middle of the night, I am convinced that this is good data. There's a good number. It was well reviewed. The very few weaknesses in the study. So I can tell you this: I'm going to bed between 10 and 11 at night, and I'm a board-certified cardiologist, so I really resonate with that.
Yeah, close to 90,000 participants, and the fact that it was peer-reviewed is a sign of a good study. Now, talk to me about, do we still need that 8-hour stretch, that 8-9 hours? Or if you're getting to bed at that, 9, 10 o'clock hour, can you sleep a little less?
Yeah, I believe so. In other words, we used to think that duration was key. Now it's the time of bed. And the reason why the time of bed is key, between 10 and 11 being the ideal time, is that we get the greatest impact of our circadian internal clock, our circadian rhythms, which are vitally important. In other words, at this ideal time, there is optimal cortisol being released by the adrenal glands. There is optimal adrenaline or noradrenaline being released, during those hours of sleep, particularly around 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. But again, going to bed between 10 and 11 o'clock at night is ideal.
All right, next one that's really interesting to me. What's wrong with wearing shoes all the time, which as a Florida girl, I never do. I'm always walking around barefoot, but what's the issue with shoes?
Well, keep walking barefoot, because barefoot will save your life. There's no doubt about it. I've been doing research on earthing and grounding for over a decade, and the research is unbelievable. The healthiest thing you can possibly do for Floridians is walk the ocean. In other words, if you can walk on an incoming tide or an outgoing tide, it doesn't matter. But if you can walk in that water and get the grounded energy of the earth, remember, the grounded energy is like the Schumann resonance. We call it the Om, or the humming of the earth. It's the vibration of the earth. Where does that vibration come from? It comes from lightning strikes, particularly around the equator. Now, I live in Tampa for half the year, and living in Florida, we get a lot of thunderstorms. Yeah. I love it. After a thunderstorm, I go outside, I smell the ozone, I go barefoot, I walk on brick or concrete. Asphalt will not conduct the natural earth energy. Remember that.
Right.
Asphalt is out. Right. But sand is the best, especially at the beach.
I love it. Dr. Sinatra, don't make it so long before we see you again. You're awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. It was great to be here again.
All right. If you want to get a hold of Dr. Sinatra, just head to wfla.com/Bloom. I'll put a link for you. We'll be back with more Bloom right after this. Stick around.